Good evening, once again from the 8th Regional Platform for Disaster Risk Reduction in Latin America and the Caribbean, taking place here in Punta del Este, Uruguay. So there's this one document that this entire event and the work of the UNDRR is hinged upon, and that is the Sendai Framework. But what is it really? It's very important that we understand the Sendai Framework, and this may be the first time you've heard about it. And so what I did today, I went on a fact-finding mission to learn and understand more about this global agreement. Here's that report. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, or the Sendai Framework. What is it? You have probably never heard of this agreement or its importance to your country and local community. To get a better understanding, we did random interviews with a few experts on the topic.
The Sendai Framework is a sort of rules, tools, guidance to make the communities more resilient. It's the first step to get into a resilient process, with the final goal is to make more sustainable communities.
Do you think that the communities, the people that are most affected, the most vulnerable, that they have a good understanding of what the Sendai Framework is?
No, I'm sure that most of our viewers right now did not know what is the Sendai Framework.
The Sendai Framework is the last of a series of frameworks, and it's important to know that because it represents the most advanced conception of what we would like to see that disaster risk reduction was or is, and how to achieve it. I think it's highly likely that most people have never ever, don't even know the Sendai Framework exists. It is highly probable that most disaster risk reduction is done by people who don't even know there's a United Nations organization on top of it.
The Sendai Framework is the global agreement among nations and other actors is the highest agreement within the UN system that address the challenge of disaster risk reduction globally.
How well do you think the communities that are most affected, the vulnerable, the people on the ground, understand this document and their roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, not well, I'm afraid. Not that well as we would like to. I mean, the community that are behind the Sendai Framework.
The Sendai Framework lists 4 priority areas: understanding disaster risk, strengthening disaster risk governance, investing in disaster risk reduction, and enhancing disaster preparedness. But the International Science Council has cited a major problem with the implementation of the framework: communication. In its midterm review on the implementation of the framework, the Council noted that communicating risk is one of the major challenges being faced ahead of 2030.
The last recommendation that we have, that Alonso spoke to, is to develop partners in the communities who bring the voice of the community with them. This involves media, but it's not just communication. It is communication and capability, the ability to act on the information. So simply, as Alonso was saying, those partnerships are not just, let's have a workshop together. It is much more important because it has to be based on trust. Now, we have many kinds of trust. We usually hear, you've got to trust somebody. But then we ask, what is trust? It is rational. Is the information valuable and useful and grounded in science? It is procedural. Am I engaged in making that decision? But there is an even more important part of trust, which is, why should you believe that I have your interest at heart? And the arrogance we are saying is, do not walk in and think just because you did the study, someone should trust you. We don't know the answer. Neither does the community. What we want is to create the space where we discuss what is the important thing to do. Otherwise, we will do the wrong thing, but with better data.
Mami Mizutori, the Special Representative for the United Nations Secretary General for Disaster Risk Reduction, agrees that the success of the framework's implementation is hinged on how well its message is communicated to the most vulnerable. She says the lives of the most vulnerable depends on it.
Risk communication, as you say, if it doesn't reach the most vulnerable people in the most remote areas who may not even speak the common language of the country, then we are not being successful. And this is especially important, for example, in early warning, early action. If the warnings are not reaching these people in a way that they can understand, then early warning systems don't work. And even before going into the system, for many people, when they're told that you are surrounded with risk, they really don't grasp it, because there's a tendency in human beings to think that risk is something far away geographically, also in timelines. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow. That's how we want to think, that's how we think. And also, if it's not associated to that person, the way he or she lives, they don't really think about it, right? So we need to be able to translate our messages, our policies into language that is accessible to these people. If we don't get this right, we can't implement the Sendai Framework, because the number of people who die will not go down, because the number who are affected won't go down, because the economic loss won't go down. And these are specifically the indicators that will measure the success of the implementation of the Sendai Framework.
And so it stands that one of the major challenges for UN member countries within the next 7 years will be to break down its messaging on disaster risk reduction in such a way that the most vulnerable can understand why the implementation of the Sendai Framework at all levels can actually help to save lives and reduce losses. Reporting from Punta del Este, Uruguay, for News 5, I am Paul Lopez.